Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month we continue the theme breaking free to healing. Freedom towards healing can be the catalyst that may promote an environment in which healing may occur. Maybe the germination, maybe the first step. Um, a lot of time, there's a quote from Marcus Aurelius. He says, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to things itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." It's our perception, how we see things. Change, unfortunately, is always happening. We see that with COVID and everything that's happening today. But what we choose to do with those changes kind of really defines where healing may come. And we have a new guest, Sharlene Lynch. I hope I say that correctly. Is that correct?
That's
Thank-
100% correct. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. You're all the way where? Australia, is that correct? All the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It's 10:30 in the morning here on a Friday, so it must be Thursday night for you.
Yes. And it's just wonderful how we can reach people all around the world in just seconds. It's a beautiful thing. I want to share with those who are listening in the US. I know there's, by if you are in crisis, the 1-800-273-8255 is the U.S. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I know wherever you are in the neck of the woods, find what resources will work when you're in crisis. Get the help you need. I want to always say this, Sharlene. People say it better than I do. I already had Marcus Aurelius speak once. I have Helen Keller speaking now. Before we start with Helen Keller's quote, I find it so inspiring that there's so many limitations of how she could communicate, but she still communicates us today. It's amazing. So she says, although the world is full of suffering, it is full also of overcoming it. What comes to mind when you first hearing this quote? I'll put it back up.
Yeah, it's about perspective. Are we looking at the lack of things or the abundance of things? Are we in a space of gratitude for what it is that we have, even if it is something very little? And it's about where we put our focus, and where we put our focus, that's what grows.
Mm-hmm. It's just makes me, I work in the mental health field, and environment's a big thing. So there's a difference in the verbiage of house versus a home. There's something about a home, the description of a home versus a house, that is not just four walls; it's the people in it. And I find that when we think about perspective, sometimes we get things so complicated with mental health, all this stuff, but really why we care about is because of the people. That's it. The people we love, people we care about. Sharlene, you're new guest. I always love new guests because I want people to hear different perspectives around the world. And if you're okay with it, I would like you to share a little bit about your story. What brought you here? Why do you do what you do? Just a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Would it be okay if I shared the story of my son? Is
Yes.
it okay?
Yes, of course.
So in September 2011, I came home early from a birthday party, which was unusual in itself. And I was relatively sober, which was the second unusual thing for that night. And I tried to get my son's attention to let him know Mummy's home. In true mummy style, I yelled, "Mummy's home, baby." Got no response. So I went and knocked on his door, and he didn't answer. And I thought, he's probably gaming. 17-year-olds, it's what we do. Gaming, is probably wearing those headphones, and he probably can't hear me. So I tried as I may to get his attention, couldn't do that. So I asked my partner to go around the outside of the house and look through his bedroom window and get his attention and let him know that we're home, and just say hello. It's a Saturday night, we're home early, wanted to say hello. And that's when we discovered that my beautiful baby boy had hung himself. I ran from where I was to his door and I kicked the door down. And I tried for 15 long minutes to try and resuscitate him, all while praying that God could bring him back, that I could bring him back, that he would come back to life. The ambulance officers came in with their hands fully laden with equipment, and they ushered me out of the room, and time stood still as I sat outside of the room, still praying that they would be able to do what I couldn't do. The ambulance officer came out and he looked at me, and I know that he said something, but I could not understand what he said. The look on his face said it all. I crashed to the ground, still praying for a miracle. I heard one word. It was loud, it was audible. I thought everyone could hear it. It was forgive. It was a message from God to me. When I was able to stand up, the ambulance officer said, "Do you want to come in and say goodbye to Scott?" And it took me some time to get composed, but yes, I did. I wanted to say goodbye. So I went in and I laid on the ground. He's 6'3", so a really tall boy. I laid on the ground and I rested my head on his shoulders and I said, "Mummy loves you, baby. I love you so much. And I forgive you for your choice." And what I didn't understand is that act of forgiveness put me in a completely different place from the people around me. It made all of the difference to be able to heal at that speed of love from a place of forgiveness. Later on that night, I'm sitting on my lounge chair with my feet sort of tucked in underneath me, and I'm staring at my giant cup of coffee now going cold. And I said, "I'm going to thrive through this, not just survive." That's what Scott would want. I didn't even realize I'd said it out loud. I was really just talking to myself.
We had World Cancer Day was February 4th, and one of the guests on there, it was very notable. He said, if I didn't have my family, I would just give up. There's something about, when we look at the perspective, it's so tragic, and I'm sorry for your loss. Let me just say that. For me, suicide is not an easy topic, but a topic that needs to be talked about. Not because one of the things I learned in my life was it's not the easy conversations that made me grow. It was the hard ones, So I do appreciate you sharing what you could. And it's been how many years now?
September 2011, so just over 10 years.
Never gets easier. But at the same time, I it's inspirational that you're here today. Sometimes I can never, me personally, I've lost people through suicide, but I could never imagine being a parent losing someone. So I want to say, I hope those who are listening, maybe someone who is struggling, maybe someone who just lost someone close to them, know that there's it's just inspirational that you're not alone at the very basic level. We talk about little steps. External things are not things to be minimized. The people we love not being here, one was here 1 minute and not the next. It's something that's hard for us to channel and to get healing. And you use the word forgiveness. I find that a lot of times hard for us. We're the hardest critics to ourselves. And
we are. Yes. And for most of us, it's ourselves that we need to begin the forgiveness journey. If we can come from that place of forgiveness, we can do almost anything. You've really hit, Robert, the nail on the head when you said little steps, because that night when I decided I was going to thrive, my life certainly wasn't looked like a thriving life. I was 25 kilos overweight. I was OCD to the point of self-harm. ADHD to the point of distraction. I had a long history of mental illness, and I was a spectacular hoarder, so close to a level 5, and I also had been drinking for more than 3 decades, so I was a fully certified alcoholic. So to make the statement, I'm going to thrive, even though the surroundings around me and my daily habits were not that of a person who could even think about the opportunity to thrive. It's making that decision, coming from a place of forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and definitely bringing gratitude to our daily existence and tiny steps. Today I stand before you, a woman who's lost the weight, has the OCD managed, the furthest thing from hoarding you could imagine. I'm a minimalist, and have been now sober nearly 6 years. So a completely different lifestyle, and and it's all about making the decision and then having that vision for what your life could look like and taking the tiny steps. But I think when we're in the thick of things, it's really challenging for us to have that vision of what is possible. And if the listeners today could take away, 3 messages, one would be forgiveness. Who do you need to forgive? Gratitude. And also the third one would be, what is it going to take for you to create a bigger vision for your life of what it is that you can be, do, have, and share, so that you can step into that.
I a lot of times when I think about forgiveness and gratitude and these insightful things that a lot of times we spend little time on is the word time. The funny thing is boundaries are never really talked about. Sometimes we're like, well, if this is a new topic that I never dealt with, if this is something I never really focus on, it doesn't happen organically without taking the time to think about it. Doesn't and sometimes people, we tend to deflect. We have our friends, our family members who are struggling too. You just throw a rock in any direction, someone's hurting right now. All right. But at the same time, when you start to, there's one thing I wanted to share also was we don't put values a lot of times not valued. We don't value our time, so no one else will. I remember paraphrasing a quote. Why is that so important? At least from my perspective. Also, I feel in your story, not said directly, but you took time to get there. You allowed yourself time where a lot of people wouldn't. They'll just try to maintain what they have. Recovery is not maintaining, it's growing, being something different. And those little steps could be, hey, I don't feel good. This day was horrible. It's a Monday on top of a Monday, and then Garfield's all over the place. It's one of those places, and then you say, you know what? It didn't work out. I'm going to try again tomorrow. The trying again tomorrow is the thing. And I find when I'll say this to my listeners, if someone really has a problem with you taking time to be insightful or taking time just to heal, or sometimes those are the people. I'm not saying all cases. Sometimes those are the people who you need to get time from. To be honest, I'm not trying to start riffs, but at the same time, the people who want the best for you will understand eventually that you do need the time that you need.
Robert, you're very insightful. In fact, some of the people, so change meets resistance on every level. And particularly when I was moving out of the hoarding, and particularly when I was moving out of being an alcoholic, is the people that identified with that in their own life were very resistant to me even calling myself a hoarder, because that's how they lived. And if I live like that and they live like that, then I'm not a hoarder. So, and also with the alcoholism, when I came out and told everyone that, I am an alcoholic and I've been a high-functioning alcoholic for 3 decades, I had some of my closest friends go, well, that's rubbish. You drink as much as I do. So, and I've lost some friends in the process of growing. And then also I have grown closer to many people as well. So it is an ebb and a flow, and the new you moving into that new space might not fit for everybody, and it is through their eyes, it's through their lens, through their veil that they're seeing your change. So that might make them feel uncomfortable. So but you just have to trust. You really have to trust the journey, and remember, as you heal too, is that the people around you, they're going to heal at a different speed. And if we can just look at healing at the speed of love, like just leaning into the love space and knowing that everyone's on their own journey and in their own time.
Yeah, and I love. I'm going to butcher it. I'm paraphrasing, but I think as Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me something I'll forget. Teach me something I may remember. Involve me in the process, or then I'll learn." A lot of times, I understand that I learn very different from my wife. So we learn things very differently, and sometimes we forget that. I know I forget that. I'm like, oh, this is how I learned this. So this is how you're going to learn this. We're just programmed that way sometimes. I don't know, but unfortunately that can be problematic because, like you said, it's a journey. Allow people grace. Allow yourself grace. I had a recording recently from this. The person he's from Wales. Okay, so he did study how to say this. I'm kind of butchering it again. It's a word. It's Hraith. I don't know if it's right. But it's a wonderful word because it's so unique. My wife has this book. It's untranslatable words now than any other language. So it says, a homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to, the nostalgia and grief for the lost places of your past, places that never were. It's haunting just hearing those words, the description described that way. But sometimes in recovery or in healing, we get stuck there. We get stuck in the maintaining of it and not the growing. It's scary. And obviously the words of saying that is scary in itself, but I do find defining things like you have been doing in your story and just sharing that, there's been steps. We like to see the big steps, but the little steps are so important too.
Forgiveness is a daily practice. Gratitude is a daily practice. The vision of what your life could look like is a daily practice. And the daily practice of how we language words and our thought processes, it's a daily practice. It's not the big steps, as you say. It's the tiny steps that we take on a daily basis that get us in that direction. Through the process of healing, through the process of sharing with other people, because Robert, because I was in a different space, because I had come from that forgiveness instantly, and because I had made the decision on the night that he passed, and then the next day really leant heavy into gratitude, like just kept on writing page after page after page of everything I was grateful for, and I still today have a daily gratitude practice. Because I was in that space, I was the person that was helping others through the grieving process. I was the person who was helping others move forward. And so down the track, I was able to unpack what it is that I went through myself and what I helped other people with. And it's now an acronym. So I really would love to share that with you. They might find it helpful to help them move through. So it's in and around the shift process. So the first letter is S, and S is to see the big picture. So that night, as I made the decision for living a life that thrives, I wasn't able to see what the big picture was because I was still in the murkiness of it all. But after I started writing out the gratitude journal, I was in a position where I could now write out what I would like my life to look like. And that was everything from my health to what I would feel like on a perfect day, what it would feel like when I got out of bed on a perfect day. And I just kept crafting it and kept leaning back into this vision of what my life could look like. So for listeners, S, see the big picture. What is possible for your life? What would you like it to look like? And who would you like to be in that life? Where would you like to live? If you can imagine it, if you can vision it, you can craft it. But you need to start with it. And can I suggest that it needs to be really large? Because you need to have something to aim for, because then the things that happen on the way are only just little pebbles on the sand rather than cliff faces. So regardless of what happens, so in my journal, I wrote down, I want to be a world-class transformational public speaker. Now, from a space that I was in, 10 years ago, that was like, are you dreaming? Because, have a look around. You're a hoarder, you're an alcoholic, you're overweight, you're unfit. You can't even go to the letterbox to get the mail, You're self-harming, like you're not functioning. So yes, and it was set so high, the bar was set so high that it was just little steps on a daily basis to get there. So for the audience, S, see the big picture. The next is to H, is to hone in on reality. Where are you right now? So when I had to get really real about where I was, this is where I needed help. So this is where I went and got counselors. This is where I went and spoke to groups of parents that lost their children. This is where I went and I spent time with a suicide group. So I went and surrounded myself with people that could heal me. And it wasn't just one therapist, I had several that helped me hone in on reality, because we can't see where we really are. We need that assistance to sort of say, okay, this is what's working, what's not working, and have that reality, like an outside view looking in of what's happening for us. The next letter is I, probably my favorite letter, and I is to identify quick wins. Like, what's a quick win? So for me, so this is tea, Robert. But in the old days, I used to drink 8 cups of coffee this size a day. So that's a lot of coffee. And when I was aiming to give up alcohol, I'm like, I've been trying for such a long time and it just wasn't happening. But when I realized, the night that my son died, that Scott died, I stopped drinking coffee and I still haven't drank coffee. Like, whoa, okay, that's a quick win. If I can give up coffee, and that's at 8 cups a day, I can give up alcohol. So if we can implement quick wins, it gives us that serotonin hit, and it makes us believe that other things are possible. So what are the quick wins for you that can help you move towards your big goal? F is focus on the patterns, and these are your patterns of behavior. And for me, the difference has been journaling. So I journal regularly on a daily basis, and then I re-journal, because, we can be our own coach. We can be our best mentor. And by just having a look at what it is that we're writing and what we're thinking, so that we can have that inward reflection of what's really happening rather than just getting through the day. So focus on the patterns, and the patterns also might be family patterns as well. So suicide has been a family pattern. And I had in my life attempted it at least twice. So what are the patterns that are happening in your life? How can you address them? What are the family patterns? And then T is take massive action. So I'm a recovering perfectionist. So mine was take massive and perfect action. Just take a step in the right direction. And it doesn't matter if it's not amazing, at least it's a step in the right direction, and we can just keep building on that and we can fail forward. So I've implemented the shift process in my life, and that's how I help other people as well. And it really has made it easy because it's an acronym.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember.
Yeah. And, this will be all these details, everything those listening that want to find out more about shift and everything else will be in the notes of this episode. I just, what I want to say, that shift that really took note is the S. A lot of times we kind of restrict what our dreams are and why. Like when we're kids, I remember this one person, it was a comedian actually, but comedians are sometimes the most insightful because they say it really like at what everyone wants to say. And I remember he said, when you're a kid, who's the best dancer? Everyone is. Who's the best singer? Everyone's raising their hand. What happens when you get older? No one's raising their hand. I still remember the story, and obviously it's probably been said over and over on then and probably lost what actually happened. But I remember John Lennon, when he was 5 years old, he was in school or something, I'm probably a little bit older, was tasked to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be happy. He wrote that, and the teacher said, you misunderstood what I meant. Everyone else said an astronaut, stuff that were, you could actually, but he said, I want. And for me, as I grow older, I feel like he had something there. Sometimes we put the title before what we actually, before anything else, because what happens if your job goes? What happens if you're unable to continue the line of work that you're doing? Does that define your value? And I feel the answer is no, because I'm still Robert, you're still Sharlene, everyone here listening is who they are. It's just making those adjustments.
Absolutely, Robert. It is beneath what it is, the title of what you want to achieve is definitely your vision and your mission and your values. So at a foundational level, because that's what you've got at the end of the day. Yeah. So so my mission and my vision is to raise the frequency of the planet and just to bring a higher energy so that people can be more, can do more, can share more, and can take their lives onto the next level.
Yeah, I always felt like I always like to talk about the source of, not just handle what's happening on the surface. If I have struggles of I want to lose weight. Now, if I hate myself, I hate everything about, like, why would I eat broccoli? I know that sounds ridiculous. Why would I run on a treadmill? Why would I do these things that are uncomfortable when I'm already uncomfortable? I feel sometimes that's why the mental health and the physical health are really entwined, because a lot of those areas are more, I guess, feel more further because of how we view ourselves and the world around us.
It's so
Adam
true.
Adam Braun said, "True self-discovery begins with where your comfort zone ends." I think those mornings when you're like, okay, I'd go to gym, and you're like, I don't have to. Do I really do it? And those are the moments where the comfort zone ends, because the discomfort is where growth happens. I feel in regards to our communication, this is part of what prompted the podcast. I was doing events in Florida where I'm at, was that a lot of times if I disagree with someone or something like that, it becomes that's it. That's where the line of the sand. But at the same time, I learn more from the people that I don't agree with, and I still respect them because there's context and background that brings them to that decision or idea. And I feel that really I am inspired by people like you, Sharlene, that are just paving the way to, even though the funny thing is, people listening right now, if they just started listening right now, they wouldn't even know that you shared a story that was so tragic about your son. But look how much, when we think about, I've been to funerals, a lot of times they say, we're celebrating a life. You keep celebrating your son's life each time you're out here. It's amazing, and it's amazingly inspirational. I just want to commend you on that, Sharlene.
Thanks. Thank you. It is true. It is about being comfortable, about being uncomfortable. And if we can find a way to bring a level of awareness to the things that are making us feel uncomfortable, we can then, journal them, and you'll see the patterns in it. And also then we can self-heal, because we can see where our points of resistance are to growth. Yeah. And we can see when things are making us uncomfortable, is this coming from our perspective, or is this another story? And it gives us an opportunity to dive in and have a look at us and move and look at our own self, because it's the inner work that makes the difference. And then we can make a difference for others as well. So I came from an environment where I was busy making a difference for everyone else, and then my bucket was empty. And the end result was the person that I was. Outwardly, I looked like I was a successful human being. Inwardly, open the door, I'm a hoarder, I'm an alcoholic, I've got health issues. It's not working. Life was not working for me. So it's amazing how people's perception of us, but it's our perception of us that we need to work on, and be in that space of being comfortable with uncomfortable, because that's where the growth is. It's so true. It's so true.
I want to ask you, I know you shared a lot of your story. I just want to ask you, Sharlene, what has been some notable elements that changed the way you looked at things today? I know you mentioned a few, but anything you want to share as we kind of wrapping things up, and we'll get to some final thoughts you want to share with the listeners.
Yeah, the central message, that golden word that God delivered, was forgiveness. And I lean into forgiveness daily. Forgiveness for myself, forgiveness for others. And when you can aim to come from that place, you don't get offended from anything, because you're coming from a place of forgiveness. So I think too easily as a human race, we get a little bit offended. So we almost try and find ways to get offended. Look at any social media feed. And it seems to be about that. So when you come from a place of forgiveness, there is no offense. There is just love. So where possible, what can you do on your daily practices? So for me, giving thanks makes all the difference. So giving thanks to my food, giving thanks at the beginning and the end of the day, giving thanks throughout the day, just being in that space of forgiveness and giving thanks. Also the gratitude piece. So what can you be grateful for? So if I start to curmudgeon, which is like when you get a bit and you don't really know why, that's what curmudgeon is. I'm not quite sure what the English definition is, but that's what I think it is that I will do a 5-minute gratitude rampage, where I'll grab a piece of paper and I'll just write down everything that I'm grateful for. And what I find that it really helps me shift my frequency. or I'll choose just one thing and dive really, really deep and just write pages on that. But bringing gratitude, so gratitude is one of the highest frequencies on the planet. It's right up there with joy and love. So when we can lean into gratitude and lean into giving thanks, it helps lift our frequency so that we can see things from a different perspective as well. Absolutely. I love the shift process. I use this for big projects, little projects, life projects, house projects, planting stuff in the garden projects. I use the shift process for everything. I know that it works for me. I know it works for my clients, and I know it's a message for everyone to see if that can fit into your life and help you move forward. And don't be hard on yourself. At any point in time, if I was really leaning into being hard on myself, I might not have taken the tiny baby steps. And every tiny baby step I took, I celebrated. So celebrating wins is a big part of my daily ritual. I will always find a way to celebrate. It can be just the littlest thing. It can be like, 0.2 of a kilo. It can be just, I was better with my language that day. It can be that I spent more time in prayer. Whatever it is, it's the little wins that are going to make the difference. And I know that every human on this planet has the capacity to live the life of their dreams if they choose to. So making that decision that night, making the decision that I was going to thrive. When we make a decision, what happens is our own psychological immune system kicks in to support us. And whilst you're still sitting on the fence with I'll think about it, maybe I'll do this. While you're sitting with one foot on each side of the fence, your own brain is not supporting you. So if you can make a decision about what you want to do, and decision actually means to cut off and kill all other options. So if you can make a decision and go there, so just think of marriage. Marriage is making a decision. You're cutting off and killing all other options. Make that decision, and then you will put all the effort and energy in, and your own psychological immune system will support you. So, use what God gave us, use our brain, use our own chemistry so that we can lean into that and step forward and make a difference.
It's always really reassuring that, when we provide a space, you said, and you just said, it just really got in my brain, was accountability. I've been saying this a lot, and I journal too. I love the idea of people journal different ways, having creative outlet, finding ways to express yourself. One thing that I always hear is I'm not heard. I do groups and I don't feel heard. One thing is when you put value back in yourself, and it takes time, like those little steps. One thing I've noticed, at least in my journey and the people is that accountability is not a bad word. It's not a bad word to be accountable, because you see that you want to be better. The thing that I worry is bridges are static. You want bridges to be static. If they're not static, they don't hold up. But as people, we are changing, so it can't be static. Maintaining the good old days doesn't always work. If your happiest day was 20 years ago, I know this in church because I'm a church leader. I remember people the church was best 20 years ago. I feel that's really a problem, because it should be moving forward. You could always lament on the things you cherish, the things you liked, but it's always this like you said, resistance to change. Not saying that in a way that's putting down, but understanding the human side to us. And that's what I like about you mentioned the shift, when you recognize that and you journal it. I have these tributes for Mental Health Month and all this stuff and other months. The thing is, we're horrible at remembering things. That's it. We're horrible at remembering, and we were horrible at remembering our recovery. If we jot it down and we remember some of it, it can really help us move forward. I want to ask you, Sharlene, as we wrap up, any final thoughts? All the information I'm telling the listeners will be in the notes, so you can kind of check what Sharlene's doing, what's she doing, and everything else. So any final thoughts you want to share with those listeners?
I firmly believe that every human on this planet is here for a reason. And then when you reach in to that purpose and you reach in to that, you live at a higher frequency. And when you live at a higher frequency, you lift the people around you to a higher frequency. And collectively as a planet, if we all lean into living at a higher frequency, we will shift the frequency of the planet. And a rising tide lifts all ships. So everybody, even those that are not prepared for the journey, will come with us. It's our time as a human race to step into our purpose and be, do, have, and share everything that is capable so that we can live the best life here on earth and make it a real impact for those around us. So lean into your purpose, lean into your passion, and I believe you've got this.
Yeah, I feel dreaming big, journaling, and then putting all the pieces together. Just like you said so eloquently, it can build back the healing. You said before you were helping people. I always say helping people became my healing. Helping people became my healing. Serving others became my recovery. People ask me, well, you're going through all this stuff. Why are you helping people? That was part of my process. That was part of my healing. I want to say thank you, Sharlene. It's always a pleasure to have guests like you. And for me, I always find with this podcast, I'm returning guests make me feel like I'm doing something right. So don't be surprised if you get another email. Anyway, those who are watching, you can find us more updates on Revive Ministries from reviveministriesfl.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, just everything's linked through the website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, leaving you with the last quote. It's from Neil Strauss. It says, "Great things never came from comfort zones."